This video is brought to you by Patreon supporter Scott.
Well, honestly, there's no need to even do an elaborate introduction. Patreon provider Scott is literally going to keep me busy for the rest of my life because he legitimately has a problem. He found my channel and he can't stop spending money on scopes. It's a problem we all have, or at least like to have. I certainly have that problem, but he just has a larger budget for whatever. It's one of the joys about being single. I'm married and I have other obligations. No children, but such is life. Scott has sent in this beautiful Kahles. Well, at least the box seems pretty nice. Or does it? We're going to touch on that very soon. For any of you that don't even look at descriptions or whatever, this is a K16i 1:6 by 24 with an SM1 reticle, made in Austria. And if you don't know what Kahles is, Kahles, I'm hoping I'm pronouncing that properly. I'm sure I'm going to get shit for it no matter what. But they make some real top-of-the-line scopes. And it should be top of the line when we start talking about the price. But before we get there, this box obviously shows its fair share of love throughout the years. This is about 2 years old. He bought this used in the relentless pursuit of trying to find the perfect LPVO. Has he found it? We will find out. Never miss the moment. The outer box is actually just really inexpensive cardboard. It's nothing to write home about. It feels okay, but it doesn't have the same strength or girth that a Vortex box might have, or a SIG box. All the SIG boxes are really hard construction cardboard, and they're stellar. This really doesn't have much going on for it, and again, it's pretty thin. It almost looks like construction paper as opposed to heavy-duty cardboard. But let's not drop this. Alrighty. First things first, standard accessories. I don't know if this is an original owner's manual or not. This might have been printed out by the previous owner. Congratulations, yada yada yada. How to zero, how to use your turrets. I'm pretty sure we know how to use turrets here. Battery, replacing the battery. We're going to look at all this right now, so put that off to the side. And there it is. This was, obviously, like I said, purchased used by Scott. And I don't know what else would come in here, but we got some nice pieces of foam that are keeping the scope kind of sort of in place. I mean, it still allows for a lot of movement forward and back, which I don't really care for. And again, we're going to touch on the reasons why when I talk about the price. But for right now, let's take a look at this scope. A couple of love marks here and on the front. But again, used optics usually have some slight issues. This one, though, I think those are the only marks. There and right here. Right off the bat, though, I'm going to tell you, this is not very heavy. Definitely lighter than a Razer HD. Probably half the weight of a Razer HD. Pretty standard weight, I would say, for an LPVO. One thing I already don't like is that doesn't line up. Oh, look at that. It doesn't line up in either direction. Huh. They do give you a Velcro-backed Kahles patch, which is cool, and cleaning cloth. And then limited lifetime warranty. Anytime that limited and lifetime are in the same sentence regarding warranty, I usually don't care for it, because that means that if something happens to this and it's not in warranty, you're SOL. And nobody wants to be SOL when dealing with a $2,000 optic. That's right, this is $2,000. It better be mind-blowingly good, because you can pick up a used Razer HD for about half that, give or take. And yet, this is around $2,000. I'm sure you could find these less than that, but that's about the going rate, not on sale. But $2,000 is a metric shit ton of money for someone like myself. And even Scott, he says this is a lot of money. But you want to buy nice stuff, it sometimes costs a lot of money. Anyway, the fact that it's made in Austria has to do with about 95% of the fact that it costs $2,000. But overall, it seems to be pretty nicely made. It looks good. It feels good. And, well, I guess let's get cracking. Starting at the back, the adjustable eyepiece is a European style. No surprise there. Quick adjust. And feels very, very good. Little to no play, side to side or up and down. Smooth as silk, as it should for the price. Now, for the price at least, they do include a built-in throw lever, which I really like. I wish more optics would include this, but for whatever reason, most of them don't. Whatever. 1 to 6, obviously, as you saw already, given the name K16, 1 to 6. If you're ever wondering what sort of magnification range a particular Kahles optics is, it's usually a K and then followed by the number of the magnification, like a 624 is a 6 to 24, etc., etc. Anyway, I do not like the fact that this does not line up, because there's no excuse for anything on the scope to not be 100% perfect by any means of the imagination. This already is a bit of a mark, but this is a used optic. As long as it functions properly, other than that, I'm not overly concerned. Throw on this is 180 degrees, which is pretty standard for most LPVOs. The only company that does anything tighter than that is usually Leopold, but we're not reviewing a Leopold now, are we? It is very smooth. There is a good amount of resistance on it. It's not like I really have to wrench this down, but again, being used, I'm sure it's been broken in over time. From the magnification ring, we're going to take a look at the illumination ring, and I have to say I already like it. You have a single off position that lines up on top. I don't know why they have the marks up way up there as opposed to back here, because guess what? If you're, looking from the side, it'll be easier to see it back there, unless they're worried about ring obstructions, in which case, there you go, I guess. Anyway, it is smooth. Hard stop right there. Go in, a slight click. I don't know if you could hear that. Again, very smooth, as one would expect, or at least hope. And it feels like it's damped perfectly. There's just the right amount of resistance there. One thing I don't actually like is, yes, it shows you the picture of the ramp here, but why does it stop there when that's only about a third, maybe? A third of its overall rotation? Why don't they have this ramp ending there, so this way you know exactly where your maximum is? Granted, that's a little bit of a pet peeve, because who's really going to be looking over and go, oh, well, I want it at 78%. You're going to look through it, adjust the brightness, and leave it. A little bit of a pet peeve of mine. Let's take a look under the battery cover, because I'm curious to see how everything looks on this scope. Again, you're paying a super high premium for an optic. Everything better be awesome. So under the cap, it looks like you just have an O-ring down there for tension on the back of your standard CR2032 coin battery. And that's kind of interesting. There's two very tiny little connectors that the battery makes contact with. That doesn't seem very robust to me, but what do I know? I've only dealt with more LPVOs than I know what to do with. You know what? Hold on. I'm going to make a comparison right now. Primary Arms Prism, again, a CR2032 battery, big pad on the bottom, 3 contact patches. That goes in there. Yes, the battery floats, but look at the springs on the top of the cover. Even though one is missing, it happens, but there's a lot more contact on this than this, and this is less than $200. Let me grab another one. Trijicon AccuPower 1 to 4. You could actually see that the battery is clipped in by 2, 4, 6 little spring clips. And again, you have this huge contact surface with 2 springs over there on the negative side, and the 6 little arms that hold the coin battery in place. I like this because guess what? You don't ever have to worry about that battery shifting loose, as opposed to in this, which I'm not overly confident that the battery is not going to get displaced under heavy recoil. Here is the Athlon Talus I just reviewed, and it's got basically the exact same setup inside as the primary arms prism that I just showed you. Coin battery goes in there, and you have your spring on top, which makes contact with the battery and the outside edge. But again, there's a lot of surface contact and a lot of tension with those springs. Oh yeah, and this is like, what, $170? $2,000. Little coin battery. It's just supposed to like sit in there, and you'll get 1 point of contact. I would have expected a little bit more robustness, if I do say so myself. Moving on to the turrets. A lot of contact there with what feels like, yep, an O-ring. Nice big bright red O-ring. You can't miss that thing. And let's take a look at these turrets. All right, so 1 click is 1 centimeter at 100 meters. So this is 1/10 mil increments. You know what? Let's take off this turret and see what is cooking underneath. So it is keyed, as you can see. A little bit of play. And, ooh, look at that. So you can adjust your zero. Let's put this down and away real quick to see what we got going on here. So it's completely sealed. You need a little spanner over here to loosen this up to get to the inside, but who would ever want to do that on this scope? Certainly not myself. Send that back to Kahles for whatever reason, but you'd expect something like this to never ever fail on you. So the way that you reset your zero on this is actually quite simple. So this, as you can see, freewheels on there, and then the cap itself has an O-ring to put pressure on it, and also probably weather seal it ever so slightly more. And then you got the 2 flats that go on the 2 flats of the turret. You line those up, you adjust it, or you loosen it up like we have right now, and then this should be able to spin. So you could set up your zero like that and then just tighten it down. There's actually a fair amount of resistance on these turrets, and what's interesting to me is that yes, there's a zero, but there's no other numbers on it. The ridges on top, they offer decent purchase, no complaints with that, and I do like how thick the cross section is here for a coin again. It's got a pretty positive click. It's got a little bit of play. Like, let's look. A little bit of play back and forth, but nothing crazy. And the same goes for the windage. Exact same turret. It does sound a little bit louder though. Those detents are certainly sharper on that than they are there. But other than that, they feel fine. You know, they're adequate for a $2,000 scope as long as it tracks well. That's the most important part, is just making sure everything moves side to side and up and down properly, which so far I haven't had any real failures when I do my tracking test. But again, this thing should be as perfect as you can get. But you know what? Enough of that. Let's take a look at the reticle. So this is the SM1 reticle, and I have to say, I so far really like parts of it. I like the dot and the ring being illuminated like that. It reminds me of an EOTech or a Holosun reticle, which for me is perfectly adequate for most shooting. The drop indicator underneath it is pretty fine, and you know what? It's going to be a little bit hard to pick up shots in between that at distance. I also like the posts at 3 and 9. It does help keep everything level, and it does look like it would help focus your eye on the center. I'm not a big fan of the drops, but everything else seems really, really nice. And of course, the glass on this looks fantastic. A little bit of fisheye perhaps at 1x, zooming into 6x, and I mean, it's very clear, that's for sure. it looks and feels pretty damn good so far. No real complaints. Now, I did mention weight earlier and that this thing doesn't feel that heavy. And at about 18 ounces, it really isn't. Comparing it to an AccuPower, it's a little bit heavier than AccuPower 1 to 4. And the Sig Whiskey 1 to 5 that I have, it's a little bit heavier, just over an ounce, but this does have Butler Creek caps on it. So it's right in the middle of what I would consider to be an average weight for an LPVO. So kudos to them on that. It's not really mind-blowing, but, you know, it's not a real deterrent. The only deterrent so far is the price at $2,000, and I'm very curious to see how this stacks up to other optics that I've reviewed in the past, primarily the Vortex PST Gen 2 1-6, because that's my go-to, hey, you have a slightly higher budget than most people and you want to get into an LPVO, you get that. It's that good. But enough of that. Scott, thank you so much for sending this in for review. I do think you are slightly insane, but the best kind of insane, because you have helped me make content like I couldn't even begin to fathom. So thank you very, very much. And thank all of you for watching. See you again next time.
And a huge thank you to all of my Patreon supporters. Without you, this wouldn't be possible.